everybody, welcome back. Psychedelic here. This is my third entry for the Acid Archive Diaries, and I could not be more excited to talk about this one today. Although someone had already submitted this particular record from the book, I thought, damn, I thought I had that one. It's not really a contest, I guess, or anything, but yeah, this is just going to be my own take on it, and I want to give a shout out to Crazy Jimmy's Vinyl, who's been pumping videos out like nearly every day. More power to you, man. I wish I could do the same thing if I had more time. But, you know, I've been pumping videos out quite a bit myself, I guess, lately. I've just been more focused on the YouTube side of things as of late. But today, man, I've kind of geared up and tried my best to memorize the booklet again from everything I read here. I don't even have the Acid Archive book with me. It's over here. Thought I was prepared, but turns out I wasn't. Okay, this is take 2. 1, 2, 3. It's a little reference to the album we're talking about today, and that is Tom Nehls. I Always Catch the Third Second of a Yellow Light. This came out in 1973. Pressed 1,000 copies at the time. 900 copies sat in Tom Nehls' sister's basement, and 900 of them got wiped out. And it seems like over the years, you know, 10 or so copies have popped up for sale in different postings. I feel like there's more than that popped up. A lot of people have been showing originals online over the years. But then there's some copies where they got brand new covers as well. I think there was maybe more records pressed and they got put in new sleeves. And some have been actually spray painted and then pasted on here. But anyways, where do I begin? So this is a Now Again Reserve edition, the 2 LP set. Came out in like 2018, 2019, around there. And boy, when I heard about this releasing, I stepped up onto this because I discovered it maybe a couple years prior to that, and I was just like, you know, at first it was kind of hard to swallow this in. It was not the most easy to consume kind of record, but I knew there was something special here, and it took maybe a month or so. I kept listening for a bit, and I was like, yeah, this is really something special. So it's replicated just like the original. You know, it's got the kind of glued, pasted on cover. Tom looks like he's just been, like he's like in his early 20s. I mean, look at that beard that he's upholding there. I can't even reach that level. So, you know, he's here eating a bowl of cereal, you know, kind of listening to his mix on the tape machine. And, you know, he's got his cereal there, eating from the bowl. You got like the street light going off. This comes with the little Obi strip here. You guys can pause and read if you'd like. I'm going to be doing a lot of that in this, I feel like, because the booklet itself is just filled to the brim with like some amazing info about this, and we're going to get into it here in a moment. But this is like introduction notes by Rich Hopt. If you guys can pause and read that, I definitely recommend it. Hopefully it's coming up. It's a good intro to kind of get what we're going to get into here. So, Tom Nehls, based out of, I think he was like maybe outside of the Minneapolis, Minnesota area, but it was recorded in, what's his name, Paul Stark Studios at Twin Tone, which would later become Twin Tone Studios. And this was kind of like his, you know, kind of being like a guinea pig. This was basically his first project that he kind of could really do a lot of heavy editing and engineering behind without, you know, it seemed like a pretty mutual relationship with Tom and Paul. You know, sort of just, they're both kind of getting their feet wet here. And this record, for many reasons, is just totally blows my mind. I hadn't listened to it in a while, but, you know, leading up to this video, I can tell you right away, man. I mean, for being a 17-year-old, taking a bunch of high school friends, you know, a lot of local friends, local talents, and putting this passion project together in such a short amount of time, you know, I think 3 months or so. They took the time in the fall of '72 to flesh this all out. it sounds totally lived in, totally experienced, like they've been doing this forever. And the editing, you know, snippets and everything are so well curated, kind of loose, but yet almost like they know exactly what they're doing in a strange light. It's really hard to put your thumb on it. And that's why I love it so much. You know, it's just such a singular thing, kind of like, I always bring it up, Justin O'Brien and Jake, one of my top private press records. It's just taking one man's, you know, simple project, putting all this effort and work into it just to have 1,000 copies sitting in your sister's basement years later after you just passed out like, you know, 20 copies out to friends and family. That stuff to me is just so amazing. It's just all the different feats and difficulties and struggles just to get this made, all the money thrown into it. You know, I guess it's really come full circle with people like me making videos on it now. Considering this was a record back in the, you know, mid 80s to 90s getting discovered, I mean, it took a long time for this to reach people's ear holes, you know, to kind of figure out what this was all about. It's just, yeah, I'm a little lost for words, man. So we got some photos here, and he claims his influences, his inspirations are like the Beatles, Zappa, and J.R.R. Tolkien. And oddly enough, I don't hear very much of that influence on here. Stylistically, it's really hard to just put this into one category. I mean, of course it's psychedelic, but not in the traditional sense. I mean, there's so much editing going on, a lot of behind the scenes studio trickery, but also like very deep, immaculate lyrics that I can't even think that high school students, especially nowadays, even using these kind of clever fancified words, you know, in some of these songs. I think there were lyrics printed up, but some of the lyrics I was looking on YouTube, there's an uploader who's listed the lyrics, and yeah, it's pretty deep stuff, man. So before we get any further, let's dive into our Old Testament and read what the Acid Archive says, as we've been all doing. We almost all look like we're pulling out our Bibles, kind of reading these Psalms or something. Let's see. Tom Nehls, it's probably under N, right? Here it is. So we got two different ones here, but we'll see. I'll probably read both of them. There's spooky late-night urban 1970s fringe psych excursion that is surprisingly effective. It covers a lot of bases, but all of them moody and introspective, like eerie dreams rising to the surface. A patron saint's mood here and there, especially the guy's voice, but also phased fuzz psych, search party downer trips with female vocals, weary 3 a.m. Las Vegas lounge jazz, backward effects, great use of vibes and moog, consistent and determined in its ambitions and atmospheres. It sounds a bit like 1990s guy Saint Michael, actually. True psychedelia for veteran midnight to 6 trippers. The LP was recorded in Minneapolis and released in June of '73. Couldn't have said it better myself, from the old goat there, or the llama, they call him, Patrick Lumberg. And we got another one here. Really nice production LP with watery wah-wah phasing and loads of effects. Delicate and trippy, not particularly arresting compositionally, but lots of depth and in production. Good one to break out the headphones for. The echoed vocals and guitar parts have a submerged quality. A bit lightweight on the A side, but the flip gets hot and heavy. Maybe the last track does. 2 cover variations exist, a rarer one with a full-size paste on and one with a smaller paste on. I didn't hear about that, but or at least I don't recall that being noted in the insert here, this little booklet. But man, I mean, if that doesn't set things up for you, I mean, that kind of sums it up right there. Musically, I mean, you know, like I said, he's got a lot of different classmates kind of collaborating with him. You got stuff like, I think it lists it here, just so I get it all right. Or I think it's like at the end of this booklet. Let's see. Yeah, Tom Nehls, he doesn't even sing lead vocals. He's kind of just one of the many people involved. Guitars, piano, bells. And then you got Craig Gudmundsson on vocals. And to me, it kind of recalled like an early, like a young Peter Gabriel, maybe? I might be off, but I think I'm pretty accurate when I say that. It does bass and noises, it claims. You got someone on drums, timpani, and then Dave on good piano, organ, Dick on acoustic guitar, pedal steel, percussion, someone else on flutes. Then you got this gal, Dorothy Benham. If you look her up on Google Images, I think it said it in this booklet, you will see that she was actually Miss America in 1977 and Miss Minnesota the previous year. So she sang vocals on the third track. And we'll dive into the tracks once I mention the rest here. Saxophones, you got a couple saxophone parts, but really nice, light jazz touches to it. Tambourine, you got a banjo player in there. I don't remember ever hearing that in this mix. And then another organ player on a particular track, Underwater Symphony. So I think the album opens up probably the best for me. It's got kind of more of a psychedelic folk approach, I feel. Not so much on the rock side until, like I said, that last track. But right off the bat, man, the track, No People in the Forest, it's just a very whimsical, very light, very whimsy, just kind of whisks you away sort of vibe. And then opens with Words Can't Explain. It's kind of an instrumental prelude to the next track, Clean Air. It's got a really haunting like piano chords opening up the track, and with some like very brief but awesome synth moog synthesizers going on. And Dorothy's vocals really soar in the mix, even though it's a little subdued, her vocals, but they're very reverb heavy. And again, it's just kind of like an angelic voice. And once it kind of submerges into that, you go into the Underwater Symphony, and it definitely sounds like that, man. It sounds like these underwater wah-wah guitars going on with a lot of backward tape loops and a lot of whispering chit-chat in the mix, which they mention in the insert. You hear like they're listening back on the playback and kind of getting their reactions. It's really something. Like, who would have thought of this stuff back then? And, high school kids, they're not typically, you wouldn't think they'd take something like this so seriously. But like I said, it comes off, it has that kind of naive charm, but yet so invested in putting so much heart and soul and passion into this. It's crazy. So after the Underwater Symphony, side B is basically a side-long kind of suite. It kind of goes into different segments. And right on that first track, what's it called? Well, it's a whole suite called Why, but the first one's called All I Need. Being an audio engineer, I can totally tell what he's doing in the beginning of that. You hear like someone whistling, but then you hear the foam. Someone's rubbing their hand over the mic foam, the protective foam piece, but it sounds like waves crashing or something. It's a very bass heavy, I pick up on that stuff. Yeah, I think the last track that's notable, of course, is the last side, but it goes through all these different reconstructed arrangements all throughout. You just never know what direction they'll go in. Yet at the same time, it may not be easy to consume right away, but just take your time with it. The last track, Your Death, is like a 9-minute cut. And yeah, like it's got some heavy guitar riffage in there a little bit. But then you have like this kind of acoustic guitar break in the middle and closes out very much on a positive, kind of happy note. Nothing too surreal, but there are definitely some surrealistic, just naturally surreal moments on here. And you could consider this like a Real People record, but not in the sense that they're sort of like an acid casualty or mentally deranged or anything like that. They're just very much coming from a genuine spot. And I just can't recommend this one enough. This is probably my favorite of the 3 that I've shown so far, definitely. Now again reserved, this is the 2 LP set. And Crazy Jimmy's vinyl, he's got an original copy, but he said he prefers the sound on the original, but I don't know, man. I mean, now again, I know recently they caught some slack for the recent reissue of Morgan, which I haven't heard good things about. But this one sounds like it got mastered properly. I mean, this one's got a lot of clarity to it, a couple added spots to it, maybe from master tapes that weren't on the original, and just a very crisp sound. I hear things, you know, a lot more fluidly on this mix than the original. But then again, I've never owned an original vinyl copy, but the sources I've heard on YouTube, I feel like this one sounds better, but that's just me, you know. And then with the second disc, this has like different sessions he made back in 74 and 5. So he's a little more matured, and it's just as good. Maybe not as memorable, definitely some lengthy tracks, but it kind of dips into that, again, that kind of lounge jazz vibe that you hear on this one. It's just a salad mix, man. It's just salad music. You just have a lot of different elements going on here. Psych folk, some prog moves, maybe coming from like a prog bass, but it sounds nothing like the Beatles, man. And this, he's said in the liner notes, this is kind of like his Sgt. Pepper. And he went and saw them back in the early 60s. So he's definitely had a lot of history, and he's continued to evolve as he went on after this one. You know, he will later do some things for TV spots, and was part of like this acid Dixieland jazz band or something, he mentions. And he's kind of relocated, did some things in Reno and Wisconsin. He went to, you know, university shortly after this, and would later relocate to Florida since the 80s, and he's definitely received a lot of love for this one. And man, yeah, and that's basically why I'm still, you know, decided to cover this, even though, you know, Crazy Jimmy did a great video on this. I just kind of wanted to kind of expand on here and let people know that this is definitely a fantastic acid archive staple here, and recommend it, man. So if I had to pick a favorite track, I think it is Clean Air. It's kind of like a 7-minute track, I think. A lot of great progressions throughout. Second half kind of falls into the saxophone jazz. Just a lot of different intensity movements on here. You know, it can be very much upbeat, and then kind of have these very slow drags, but it all works. You know, with having Paul Stark on board, he's kind of like the surgeon, man. He's just taping up and connecting all these different tapes together and piling it on top of each other. So, can you tell I love this one? Yeah, that's why I'm here, man. So, yeah, give a shout out to Crazy Jimmy's Vinyl. I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can sub him. He's got some good originals in the background there. And I'm enjoying the series, as we all are, I think. We're all climbing on board, but of course me, naturally, just this is what I dig into, man. I think that's all I got for this one. Kind of wanted to keep it short, but I think for the remainder I'll kind of lighten the load and maybe do something that is a little more rare, but maybe doesn't have a huge backstory to it, or I don't know enough about it. I should also mention too, I have a secret admirer who hinted me towards getting the second edition. I guess he wants to keep anonymous. So I finally picked up the second edition. Should be arriving maybe over the weekend into next week. And I'm going to dig into that for sure. So take care, and we shall see you soon.